Ya salam, ya salam. Let me just bring this up. Right. Allahu Akbar. Right, I'm just gonna wait for some of you to come live. Let's do an audio check. All right, the audio is good. Shukran, Nora. Allah bless you. Right, so Bismillah, alhamdulillah wa kafa, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadihi alladhina irtada, wa man bihudahum ihtada, wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa, wa ba'd. فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا. Right, ya Jama'ah. Welcome back to another episode and session of Meaning with MALM. So I wanted to, let me just take a look at if, all right, hopefully I can, right, whilst you guys are just tuning in, I'll just take a look who's live with us. I'll bring up as well some of what I wanted to go through today. Right, so let me just bring this up. Right, here we are. Right, there it is. Okay, so this is what I wanted to look at today. Believe and you will achieve. Allahu Akbar. I wanted to explore some of the prophetic guidance on that and then the Quranic teachings. So, how the Quran and Sunnah give us some insight to this principle of believe and you will achieve. And in light of that, I wanted to take a look at a great debate that I feel is still very relevant today. It's a classical debate from the 19th century, really, from the father of, between what is the father of almost modern psychology, or at least American psychology, William James, and between William Clifford, an English mathematician stroke philosopher and physicist, and it's on the nature of belief. And I feel that fundamentally speaking, even though a lot more has happened in our times, this debate is still very relevant for our times. And that's discussing the debates centers on should we believe in God? This was the, and by extension other beliefs. And is it absurd or is it impermissible to believe in God almost? This is the, and we've still got different manifestations of that debate going on today between atheists and people of faith. So, okay, so that's something I want to explore as well and just show you a bit of what's gone on in history so you're familiar with this debate. But first and foremost, let's see who's tuned in. So, Nora, once again from Florida, ahlan wa sahlan. I hope the Florida hurricane is now settled and you're all well, inshallah. Scorpio, all right. How are you doing? How are you keeping? We've got to get back with with the book club, book lounge. It's just been a crazy time, people, and yeah, a lot had been going on, and those of you that are familiar, my mother's health, so she'd been diagnosed, unfortunately, with what appears to be stage 4 of bowel cancer. And that's, it's been tough on everyone. And we got some insights into it about a month ago, but without having a clear understanding where it is. They weren't sure. They needed to do scans. They needed to do a biopsy to further ascertain. And then only just actually last week, last week on Wednesday, so it's just been a week. This is why I couldn't do last week's session. It was just a heavy day. And and then what happened is, I think we just sometimes some things that, the weight of them, it by its nature, it brings you down by the very nature, by the very just reality of what they are, or just by what they are. So, but I think, by maybe a day later, with a certain amount of rest, and you've got to let things sometimes. This is the nature of this dunya as well. When things afflict us, we've got to sometimes just let them take their toll. And there's the instant, there's the shock, there's the absorbing that shock, and then once that's the impact, the immediate impact has taken place and happened, then tawakkulan ala Allah, you rise again. So I think after probably a day of it, then we had to rise back really with positive spirits, because what else is there ultimately in the face of these things? And I think that, you see, we're doing our thing, everything we can, we're looking into, I've really been looking into, my siblings as well. We've been really looking into a lot of other things as well. Just, I'm really surprised actually by the stuff I've come across online, on YouTube, just talks, the stuff I've then read up on things like diet and food, and we're doing our thing, and there's certain alternate kind of methods, I guess, adopting them. And then more importantly, we're also just all there. We try to every day be there, and it's a very, I must say, blessed atmosphere. It feels like, in some ways, because it doesn't, it's strange that in life we're so absorbed with the day to day, with the run of the mill, that we're part of the rat race, that we don't get a chance to maybe sit back and appreciate life. And in some ways, the way the whole family pulls together, comes together, just the atmosphere of just being there, all the kids, everybody's kids, the whole thing. It's like the only time that there was some, resemblance of that is really Eid. And so in some ways, it's almost like an Eid every day. There's there's this positivity to it, and there's this kind of love, and I think ultimately, you see, life and death is in the hands of Allah. If Allah has decreed that that is it, then that is it. You've lived your time on earth. It is for you to embrace every moment up until then. But if Allah has not written your time yet, then nobody can say it differently. And it is upon us to just really absorb life, And so, yeah, so that's what's been going on. I've been, yeah, in that, but we're all kind of now, alhamdulillah. I mean, there's a lot of, we've risen again with a lot of positive spirit, given the circumstances. But in many ways, I think sometimes, um, the the vulnerability and precarious nature of life is that, you'll hear of these cases. Somebody, they're doing something and there's an accident, and that's it, they've gone. Or you'll hear that somebody suddenly just had heart failure and that's it. And in fact, we're hearing a lot more of these heart failures recently. I don't know why that is, whether it's, dare I say, linked to, but the point is that we're hearing a lot of these things. And so in some ways, they, the there is a blessing in being able to absorb every moment of life with people that you love, with, um with barakat, with blessings and barakah. So, yeah, so that's what's been going on, in addition to a bunch of other things, the usual. My whole routine for about a month has been different. In light of, I won't speak too much about this, but in light of these recent circumstances, I've really also given my diet, since I started looking into all of this, I've given my diet a shake up. So I've really just cut out, um, certain excess junk things. I've kind of just cut them out. All kind of fizzy drinks, as much of kind of nonsense junk, like hyper processed food, to whatever I can, to the extent. And then I've introduced certain things. I've been watching a lot of these videos, a lot of these lectures, TED Talks, podcasts, and just introduced certain, certain kind of super greens and superfoods, and just into the diet, along with certain, kind of plant extracts and stuff, um, and just a lot more of this, just taking care of the self. And, um, even if I am doing what I'm doing, but, water intake, green tea, I've been really shocked on the research I've been coming across, these simple kind of things like that, how powerful they score in, as antioxidants and things. But yeah, but what's been shocking is that only just within what has been under 2 weeks, really, just over a week, the better part of, like, maybe a week and a half. But the shocking transformation I felt just within me, I've been like, wow, okay, what the hell? How have I been abusing my body for? Damn, I have to say, honestly, it's shocking how positively, my kind of, if I can say, gut health had just improved within just a week. I've been like, whoa, okay. So, yeah, and this too is by, virtue of, if of the tragedy of what, we're going through, and primarily my mother's going through. And I see sometimes, it's almost poetic, um that in our tragedies, our personal tragedies, we perhaps give life to other people around us. It's wow, it's honestly, it's something if we think about it. But I want to say, you guys, much love for all your love, and you guys have really, you're honestly, you guys are amazing, man. Allah bless you all. Right, let's see, who else have we got? Jamil Thaking. All right. Allah bless you. Shukran, shukran. Rahim. All right. On my way going south like many currencies. Have tawakkul. That's what today's session is about. Have tawakkul. Yep, heart failures are linked to. We all know it, but don't get your. Yep, I stopped short of saying it. Yeah. Um. Right. Ya salam. Nora, may Allah bless your father's afterlife. Ameen. Ameen. And may He grant you ease in this time of difficulty for you. Yeah. Yeah, somebody said TED Talks are manipulated. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I've been watching a lot of different things and just doing my own kind of research, really. And yeah, right. Who else have we got? All right. Yeah, pomegranates. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of these kind of raw plant extracts as well. You get this. Graviola is meant to be really powerful as well, helpful, especially for people going through, as an anti-tumor and that kind of stuff. But it promotes overall good health for people as well, just boosts the immune system. But there was another one. It's called something like cloud or ayahuasca or something. Sounds a bit like ayahuasca, but it's not. It's actually got part of the same plant, but not the hallucinogenic thing. But that's really good as well for men's health, and a bunch of these things. I've been really getting into them. Um, right. Okay. Let's take a look at what you guys are going through. Right. Um, right. Opinion on, yeah, I think it's let's actually begin here, and then I want to go through some uh poems, and as we usually do to begin, I'd put some on the uh, Nora, shukran, much love. You really didn't have to, but we appreciate your love and support. Shukran. Allah keep you blessed. um Iran, yeah, it's so sad what is going on in Iran right now. Really, I mean, it is horrific. This was never Islam to go around. You see, what people are doing is they are making, I'm not saying that's their intention, but the consequence is that they are making people hate Allah and His Messenger. And that is such, honestly, that is such a burden to carry. That if you are responsible for people distancing themselves from God and His Messenger because of your words, your actions, your pathetic inability to handle situations, that's on you. That's on you, man. So this kind of Iran, its regime, this whole thing with the hijab, this is not Islam to go around beating people like this, and and they that with the whole what's her name, Masa, or I'm not sure how she pronounced it, but this whole case, may Allah bless her soul, she's passed away, and they this what seems to be a cover up of police brutality. They really need to stop these whole, this religious police, because the truth is power corrupts. You see, you can't trust people. It's like, when somebody came to Imam Malik and they asked him about this kind of impositional attitude, and they asked him a particular thing, and he said, well, he said no, that does a person need to obey certain authority, and this to parental authority, and this was on matters of talaq and things, but the example that Imam Malik is giving, where he says no, and the person says, but Umar told his son and he had to obey. This is where they try to correct the teacher. The Humvee hair. It's like, don't forget that I too am here. So Imam Malik said, sure, if you can bring me a father like Umar, then I will say. But these parents today, and this isn't a diss on parents, but he was trying to say people have agendas at play. They have politics at play. Let's not be naive. Let's not pretend. And, you give a bunch of people authority to go around, wielding their whip in the name of God. And you think they won't be corrupted by that. You're naive if you think they won't be corrupted by that. So and now there's this incredible protest, and it's amazing that it's not getting as much coverage from the rest of the world. And women are just fed up in Iran, and they really, this whole thing, I wonder, ya salam, there seems to just be an unrest in the world. I hope that, things can just reach a state of calm. Ameen. But yeah, I don't know what's going to unfold there. I just, this is not the way of Allah and His Messenger. It's not the way. Even if they follow where did the Prophet ever go around saying to smack people and do things like this? Where did he say this? And you're forgetting, in Islam, the whole thing took such a long period. I mean, the longest period of the Prophet's prophethood was in Mecca, where there was nothing but just saying, look, just build a relationship between you and God. There was nothing else. There was no, people did pray, but they weren't mandated. Some people prayed, others didn't. And then a few years before the Hijrah, the Salah was then introduced. But for the better part, for that decade first, no. And people weren't, and just look at the verses of the Quran, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, that cleanse your clothes, your garments, stand upright, be just, just cultivate a relationship. And then in Medina, it was tadrijiyan. It was incrementally introduced. And it wasn't just like, and the hadith says that if there's a hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha that had Islam, the rulings come down suddenly, many of the people, or most of the people, would have rejected them. It took decades. Just because now Islam is here doesn't mean the fitrah of insan has changed. So, sure, this is how we do it. Be an example of compassion, an example of kindness. Smile. Doesn't matter if it's not their time yet. Go easy on them. Go hard on yourself. If you want to go hard, if you want to bully someone, bully your own ego. Don't, get somebody else. You wear the hijab. Well, what the hell is this about? It's her relationship with God. What does Qadiyat say? Great legendary Maliki Don of Muslim Spain, 900 years ago, Hafid of Hadith, one of the greatest scholars of Hadith this Ummah produced. And he wrote one of the dearest biographies on the Prophet, Ash-Shifa, he called it the cure. What does Qadiyat say? He says the obligation is not on the women. He says the obligation is on the men to lower their gaze. قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. He says whether the women cover or not, that's that's between them and God. So, if these people are going to lash their own eyes if it's that difficult for them, but don't create a hatred. between people and God and His Messenger. That's a grave thing, man. So yeah, if you want to do something, do it with love. Just do it. People, their time will come. People, it's not that, maybe it's not their time now. It's okay. I'm sure there was a time for all of us when something wasn't our time. With a certain age, with a certain thing, we think, oh, right, okay. It's now our time. Maybe some things it's still not our time, but it's okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, right. Okay. Now, let's go to bringing this up. Allah, Allah. I thought today from Maulana Hafez, this is an interesting one. For I have learned that every heart will get what it prays for most. Because more than anything, what this is saying is that what preoccupies your heart becomes your reality. Just think about that. What preoccupies your heart becomes your reality. And Allah's made it in a way. That's part of the divine algorithm. So, yeah. And, right. So, and today, really focusing on belief and especially the element of reliance, tawakkul, but iman itself, having faith. And this is an interesting one. And, whether it's nested in the Gospel of Matthew or not, but that your faith can move mountains. But this part, and your doubt can create them. I love that. I mean, that. Your faith can move mountains and your doubt can create them. This is an anonymous quote, but it's just so, you see, it's all in the mind. It's amazing, huh? It's amazing. When a person has the faith to do something, there's what's that? Yeah, I've forgotten his name. There's a Bollywood movie actually made. It was based on a real life story. I've forgotten the guy's name now, but they were calling him the Mountain Man. It had what's his name? Act in it. Really solid actor. Nawazuddin Siddiqui. And the movie is about this remote village. It's based on a true life story and you can search it, but it's where they live in this remote rural area, and to get to the local town, you have to traverse this mountain, and there's always difficulties. But I mean, his wife dies because he's trying to get her to some help, and she dies along the way with this mountain. And then he takes this upon himself to break this mountain, and what spans, I believe, over 2 decades of his life. Every day he comes with a hammer, and he eventually he breaks the mountain. He makes a passageway through the mountain. I mean, that is the faith of insan, that I can do this, that I can break an entire mountain. It's crazy, but it's a very inspiring movie, honestly. Wow. But you guys will, if you Google him, it will come up. But yeah, that's and faith does that. Faith does that to us and for us, that your faith can move mountains. And this really something we know all the time. If you believe it, you can achieve it. Right now, so that's what we're going to focus on today. This I saw, every week I have some poems. I see them and I think, chalo, let's share them. This is a fascinating one. फिर हमने तेरे बाद भी एक उम्र काट ली, पहले पहल तो शाम बिताई नहीं गई. हाय 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 हाय. Honestly, wow. फिर हमने तेरे बाद भी एक उम्र काट ली, पहले पहल तो शाम बिताई नहीं गई. He says, and then eventually, after you, we lived an entire lifetime. He says at first, he says at first, the moments, the kind of the portions of us, the single portions of a day, of an evening, pehle pehel to sham bitai nahi gayi. That at first, that simple portion of an evening was everlasting. Like we couldn't get beyond that. And then eventually we lived an entire lifetime. You know, in many ways, this could tie into many things. It could tie into love, it could tie into abandonment, but it could tie into a person's relationship with God. It could tie into a kind of remorse of having reached a certain stage of life and then thinking, wow, you know, it could tie into passions. See, that's the beauty of poetry. It ties into wherever you, however you look at it, that's how it appears to you. So I thought, yeah, let's share that. And this one came up. I was like, Chalo, go on then, yaar. This is from Qatil Shifai. This is really popular. That ये ठीक है नहीं मरता कोई जुदाई में खुदा किसी को किसी से मगर जुदा ना करे. It's so powerful. It is, isn't it? That he says that it is true by separation one doesn't truly die. That, you know, nobody, they don't just truly die because they've been separated from someone. He says, that said, may Allah never separate a person from who they don't want to be separated from. That's, wow, you know, honestly, in poetry, with such simplicity, how these people, their words pierce our hearts and soul. ये ठीक है नहीं मरता कोई जुदाई में खुदा किसी को किसी से मगर जुदा ना करे. Qatil Shifai. Wow, an epic. He's an epic poet as it is. Right. Okay, so that's that. I wanted to then move into, let's take a look at some comments and then we'll move into the session. Yeah, Mo Jane, that's deep. It really is. This poetry it hits you, man. Seriously. You know, sometimes on many a days it's been it's been such an empowering companion, an inspiring, from whom I can take solace, I can take inspiration, I can find strength, I can find laughter. It's poetry, honestly. It never fails. Never fails. Yeah. Right. Fahar Murtaza. Fahar. It's an interesting name. Oh, Fahar. Fahar. Okay, was just watching your videos before Fajr here in India. Geo, Meri Jaan, Geo. Allah bless you. Ameen. Right. Let's see what's that having faith thingy doesn't apply to learning coding though. Maybe it does, you know, maybe it does, because you see, what we value in this world comes back to how it ties into our story. Yeah. So, yeah, that's so I think in many ways, why do some things become valuable to you? Why do some things all of a sudden impress you? It's sometimes it's amazing, isn't it? Insan and Insan's perspective. We have in life oracles that they may be our personal oracles. So for some reason, if this person, whoever they are, they may be, so it's more let's say it's a platform. It doesn't have to be a digital platform, but it's a placeholder that may be preoccupied by multiple people throughout our lifetimes. But these people, their opinion matters to us for whatever reason. It may be that we look up to them, that we're just kind of inspired, that we think, oh, these people are so cool. It may be that we just are in awe of them, or it may be that we are romantically interested in them, or it may be that we are just so impressed by their know-how, their knowledge. It may just be inexplicable. We don't know why, but there's just this person. Maybe they're not even so super, they're not these geniuses, but they're just people that to us, they occupy that placeholder, that their opinion matters for whatever reason. Those people, when they say something, that is like an oracular kind of message for it. It's like an oracle. So we take that to heart. And it's amazing. It can change our entire, so somebody said coding. You could think coding is, oh, this is pathetic, or this is, this isn't about coding, but it could be about anything. And all of a sudden, somebody that who matters, whose opinion matters, says that they like it. And we are like, well, you know what? Actually, it's quite cool. It's true though, isn't it? You get people, you could, for example, hate a particular clothing. You could maybe hate something about yourself. Maybe you hate the way your eyes are, your nose is, your face is, your features. You hate something about yourself. Or maybe hate is a strong word. Or you just don't like, or you feel insecure about something. Or you feel that you're, or it could just be about a certain thing that you do or the way you do something, and then some person whose opinion just holds value likes it or compliments it to you, and all of a sudden in that moment it's as though life's algorithm for you is recoded in that moment, that you actually think, well, actually, this is actually quite it's happened to, I'm sure, all of us on many things. And I wish it happens more and more, because human beings, we totally, honestly, we are incredibly beautiful in all of our manifestations, in our skills, in our talents, in us as human beings, in our legacy, in our interaction. But we forget that. And sometimes it's not that we forget it. Sometimes it's that we've never been made aware of it. So being made aware of these things, it can radically change. And I think that's a good thing as well, that if you happen to be a in that place holder for someone else in life, I think you should. And there's certain things about people that are good or praiseworthy, or I think it's always good to give those compliments to, because they redefine people's lives. Yeah. Shukran, Andra Taylor, Allah bless you. Shukran for the super chat. And Rifi, as always, Allah bless you and keep you guys smiling. Ameen. Right. What I think Farooq Hussein, Mufti Abu Layth is cool. Shukran, yaar, shukran. Can a person be what? Oh, can a person? I thought you said, can a person be God? Can a person be a Muslim but not love God? Right. So, interessante. I feel that, in these circumstances, when people say they don't love God, it's not that they don't love God. It's that they are going through a tough time. They are hurting. That they have been really, they've found themselves in the throes and vicissitudes of fate. Yeah. And they're upset. And they're upset with God because they feel that God ultimately has all control. So why doesn't he change it? And yeah. And it's not, I feel that, sometimes some people, they'll hurl criticism at people like this. They'll be like, what the hell? How dare you, say things like this and here. And I feel that's, that I mean, I can understand what people getting offended because they're thinking, oh my God, you're not allowed to the sensitivities and God, we can't speak about God like this. But it's that these people, their relationship, it's, I mean, not as this is, it's a pathetic approximation. It's not, you can't use this as a approximation. In Arabic, they say bila tashbih, but it's like, just to akin to give some approximation, the way a child becomes upset with his or her parent over something, and the child's like, oh, I hate you, I hate you, like a little kid having a tantrum because something's not right. They're not allowed to do something, or they can't do something, or something hasn't worked out, or with kids, it's all it could be almost over anything, and they get angry. I hate you, and kids' emotions are just like sheer emotions. There's a beauty in that as well. It's but it's in, you see intimations of that in these people with their relationship with God. That there's this kind of episode that's happening, and I think just let people be. It's like the child having this, like, it's just let them, like, it's not to tell the child, oh, shout, or to kind of try to, no, like, it's that they'll, inshallah, that they will understand with time that, you see, this chapter that you're in, this page that you're on, this story, it will yet tie into another chapter. Things, this is the thing, things only make sense in the end. It's all in hindsight. And so, yeah, may Allah bless everybody's journey and make it easy. Right, I wanted to take a look at this. Here, I want to take a look at this concept of believe to achieve. So, before we go into the Quranic guidance, what I'll do is I'll go into this, I'll explain this, then we'll cover the other session, then I'll share the link, and if anybody wants to jump on, they're more than welcome. Okay, I'll take some live callers. So, right, so this believe and you can achieve. This true sense of belief, iman, it's tied, it has an intricate, inextricable bond with tawakkul, with reliance, with this kind of trust. Now, there is a hadith. It's transmitted in Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Ibn Hibban, in Musnad of Ahmad. And it's by Umar ibn al-Khattab. I mean, this is taken from here, this particular copy from Ibn Rajab's Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam. But here, this hadith is a very famous hadith. You've all heard of it. That Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anh, he says that the Prophet said, لو أنكم توكلون على الله حق توكله, that if you were to truly have faith and reliance on God as it ought to be, لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير, that he would be providing you in accordance with your belief as he provides the birds that fly free. تغدو خماصا وتروح بطانا, that the birds, when they leave their nest in the morning, they leave with empty stomachs, not knowing where or how they will find their rizq, but they return at night with their stomachs being fed, having been fed, that with full stomachs. وَتَرُوحُ بِطَانًا, they come back with stomachs full. And this is a really fascinating hadith, because it is, there's a very famous scholar of hadith, Abu Hatim al-Razi, and he says that this is the foundation, really, for the teaching of reliance in Islam. It's this hadith. This is the asl of tawakkul in this theme. That, wow. And it's so, just look how it captures it. Because you could think, well, right, but why is, you see, this metaphor of yarzuqukum kama yarzuqu at-tayr, he will bring the rizq to you as he brings it to the birds. But you see, what do the birds have to do? They have to have that trust, and then they have to leap into the air. Take that leap of faith. Scary as hell, you see. But Allah enables the birds to float impossibly, almost, through the air, gliding, led unbeknownst to them to their divine providence and rizq. So, you see, the thing here is that if you have the faith, you have to leap for the opportunities when they come. So you can't just sit there. You take that leap. You have to catch those opportunities. And Allah will make sure that you get them. But you have to, you see that there's an interplay. So I think that's such a beautiful way to begin this discussion, with this hadith of the birds being fed. So with this, I wanted to take a look at 3 verses of the Quran. One, Surah al-Baqarah, verse 268, and then Surah Fatir, verse 15, and then Surah Baqarah again, coming back to Surah Baqarah 186. And there is a dynamism between these verses. Okay. And this is all about faith, having faith. Because really, whether we like it or not, we are still believing in things. The fact that you will go to sleep today believing that you will awaken tomorrow. It is a belief. Our whole lives are built within our minds on a belief system. And we'll speak a bit about this when we're going to come to the psychology debate about belief between William James and William Clifford. But this, you see, we are so deeply intertwined in beliefs. But what you choose to believe, this is the powerful point. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا والله واسع عليم. This is such a powerful verse. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. And in some recitations, الفقر بالضمة. But that the shaitan promises you, the negative thoughts, they promise you, they frighten you. What does promise here mean? When you promise somebody, what is that? When I promise you, or you promise me, or you promise someone, you're telling them, oh, this is going to happen. I'll be there. I promise I'm going to be there. It's going to happen. I will give this to you on this day. It's going to happen. You see. So this is right. We've got some, look at this. We've got some Tinder adverts coming up trying to pollute our dars. Right, so coming back to this, ta'awudhu billahi minash shaitan rajim, that ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr. That when here this negative, the source of all negativity, this is the shaitan. He's promising what's going to happen. Oh, you'll be impoverished. You'll be impoverished. Oh, there's going to be poverty. Oh man, this is going to happen. There's going to be poverty if you do this. Oh, you want to give in charity? Ah, man, these are precarious, volatile times. You want to help someone? Man, you need to save that money for yourself. And here, faqr, poverty, can be in wealth, but it can be in many things. It can be in time. So wealth, of course, it can be in time. It can be in emotions, who you share your love with, who you share your positivity with, who you share opportunities with, who you share, who you can share all kinds of resources with. You can, sure, wealth as well, that's one of them, but it's not restricted to. But what is the shaitan promising you? That, oh, what's going to happen if you do this? You're going to be left wanting. You're going to be left short. So, وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. Now, here, many people, you'll find, they argue that fahsha here means bukhal. So many of the Mufassirin, Qurtubi, Zamakhshari, quoting Abu Muslim and other people, they say this here means bukhal, that, withholding. But even if it meant indecency, that it could mean either indecency or it could mean bukhal. A lot of the Mufassirin say here it means this kind of fahish in Arabic does mean something that is withholding as well, which is strange because it's tied into the understanding of it's tied into the understanding of indecency or obscene, which in a way is withholding, one could say, that kind of good character. There's this kind of bond, but fahish can mean that in Arabic as well. So in classical Arabic, so وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. So the shaitan, this negativity, you're about to do something good. You see something, you think, yeah, I wanna get involved. I want to help this person. I want to contribute towards something. I want to teach this young person a skill. I want to give a bit of my time towards this. I want to express more of my love and do all of these things. It could be anything. Here you get these voices. But if you do that, this is going to happen. People will take you to be a fool. People will, they will exploit you. People will do this to you. You'll be left with less money. You'll be left with less time. You'll be left with, you see this, يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَقْرِ. Well, that this يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرُ وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَةِ. What's interesting is Allah then contrasts that. وَاللَّهُ يَعِدُكُمْ مَغْفِرَةً. Allah. Now check this out. The first word, Allah says, but what does God promise you? What's going to happen? Maghfirah. Maghfirah is an interesting word. It's used to mean, it can mean forgiveness, but here it doesn't necessarily mean just that. It means like a satar, a veiling, a covering. Veil what? Satar for what? Your shortcomings. The gaps. Allah will have them covered for you. It's interesting because in Arabic, mighfar is also a helmet, because it's a veil, it kind of protects. So the famous hadith that the Prophet entered Makkah wa ali ala ra'si mighfar, he was wearing this helmet. So maghfirah minhu, this veil. Even these thoughts, you've thought negatively, you've got this horribleness to you. Don't worry, Allah has placed a veil over it. Allah. And وَفَضْلًا, Allah will promises you so much abundance of grace. وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Allah is so vast in what He gives. And Allah ends it by saying knowledgeable, all-knowing. So yes, you're hearing these negative voices. Hold back. Don't be that kind to people. People are going to take you to be, they're going to take you for granted. You give an inch, people take a mile. You're going to be kind to someone. They're just going to exploit you. And that is true. It doesn't mean people don't do these things. You give in charity. Oh my God, you could do with that money. You could spend it yourself on something. You could help orphan children. You could help. No, but you could use it on yourself. Do this. Oh my God, this is happening. Winter time is coming. There's an energy crisis. There's this going on. There's Russian, Ukrainian, there's the whole Russia-Ukrainian war going on. This is happening. That's happening. Relax. Wallahu wasi'un alim. Allah has got this, but you need to have that faith. But we are constantly this fear of faqr, of this being impoverished, being stripped away. This is like an inherent fear that we have as humans. This is why the second verse, honestly, it ties in dynamically to that verse from Surah Fatir, verse 15. Ya ayyuhan nas, antumul fuqara ila Allah. You people, you are poor people. What the hell is wrong with you? It's a reality check. Wallahu huwal ghaniyyul hamid. You are always in every single thing in need of God. Wallahu huwal ghaniyyul hamid. Allah is entirely independent, ghani, rich of any needs from you. But then why end with the word Hamid? And many of the Mufassirin, Ibn Ashur, Qurtubi, all these people, they write. Because when Allah says He's absolutely independent, He's rich of any needs from you, the understanding in this world that you get is when people are like that, they don't want anything to do with you and they don't give you anything. They don't. But Allah says Al-Hamid. Yet people are they're so happy with God that they're constantly praising God. وَهُوَ الْغَنِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ, because He gives incessantly. It's interesting, guys. Remember I mentioned that I've been looking into all these diets and stuff and food, and it's just it's like, it's revelatory what you learn. Foods that are so healthy, foods that are like anti-cancerous and all these kind of things, and just generally so positive for your body. And part of this, I was looking into things like you get intermittent fasting, and fasting for what, maybe 3 days or 5 days, as in with water and with drinks as well, or with water under certain kind of supervision. But it's shocking that what happens is, even this intermittent fasting, where people will eat, but they will fast, let's say, a certain, whether they'll begin with 12 hours, maybe 16 hours of the day, they end up fasting, they build it up, their tolerance. What this triggers is what is called autophagy, a state where the self it goes into this internally, it goes into this this kind of reboot mode, and it releases and activates so much regeneration within you, and it resets all this kind of damage. It will promote stem cell kind of regeneration. It promotes, obviously, done to certain extremes. But it's shocking because there's a hadith. I was saying this to some of my mates, actually. I said that it's so shocking that there is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that sumu tasihu, that fast, you will improve in good health. But it's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? Because to people, they think, well, I'm not eating. And this is associated with the poor. And it's so shocking that many things Allah has hidden them in plain sight. But sometimes it's so in plain sight that we can't see it. And obviously, by the way, as a disclaimer, for these kind of prolonged fasting, it does depend on people. If they're already very kind of underweight and things like this, then these things can be dangerous. And if they've got certain health conditions, then they can be dangerous. But that's the prolonged for several days. But generally, it's shocking how such things have been hidden in a way that the poor constantly have access to it. It's amazing. Like, if you go onto YouTube and type this stuff in and just watch, and you can watch interviews, you can watch podcasts, you can see the research, you can see presentations, and research yourself. But it's amazing that people won't do it, because you see, the very thing of the rich is to distinguish themselves from the poor. So the fact that they will eat to show that we are not poor, you see. So people are often doing things just as, now it's out of habit, but it's in essence just as a statement to show that, oh, we're not poor, we can afford things. And it's ironic, you see, that in that simplicity is hidden an elixir of life. It's crazy, honestly. It's just like, wow. And our egos come in the way, I think. Ego, and also, a sense of a lack of knowledge as well, but also at times an ego will come into. And this verse reminds us that, yeah, Yunas antumul fuqara. What the hell are you guys going on about? You guys are the ultimate poor in comparison to God. Like, you are the fuqara. Wallahu huwal ghaniyyul hamid. It's beautiful, honestly. You have to just grasp that. It's shocking when you think of it. That, wow, that how these things have been. And I was thinking about this. I thought, honestly, it really made me think that we have a whole month in a year, Ramadan, where if we were to do that properly, it could trigger enough autophagy to regenerate and reset our systems for the rest of the year. Maybe if we topped it up here and there with some occasional kind of, I was just thinking, wow, that's like such and it's just coming to appreciate that just now. I'm like, wow. But I don't, I'm guilty of this. We don't really do Ramadan like that, unfortunately. We're like, as soon as iftar, where's the samosa, the pakore, the katlam? We're like, ah. Well, obviously, in that way, it all goes to waste. But I mean, it doesn't go to waste, but the healing properties of it go to waste. And it's yeah, somebody said Dr. Rhonda. Yeah, exactly. And there's many, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. There's, yeah, autophagy. Um, it's crazy that sometimes this is what I'm saying, that it's Leonardo da Vinci, as he said, that the highest simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. That it's so simple that you would never imagine. But it's so true. It's like, wow. And we forget that sometimes. We have extra meals and we just constantly eat and eat and eat. And it becomes almost a sign of who we are as well, and a symbol, a status for insan and his or her accomplishments. But really, ya ayyuhan nas antumul fuqara ila. You're nothing but impoverished beings to God. Always in need of God. Wallahu wal ghaniyyul hamid. And this really dynamically ties into this verse from Surah Baqarah 186, that وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي, that when my people ask about me, this is God saying, فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. Allah. See, पूछने की देरी थी. That all you had to do was ask, and God is already there. إني فإني قريب. أجيب دعوة الداعي إذا دعان. I respond to the one who seeks of me when they seek of me. This da'an is da'ani. Okay, in some recitations it's written with the ni, but here da'an in most of the kind of dialects. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. See, let them then turn to me in their prayers. Let them have faith in the hope that they find their path. See, it's amazing because here there's three things that are given as a method. One, they turn to God, okay, that you call upon. Because when you call upon something, it gives you strength. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. Let them have faith in their hearts. The second thing. And then let them in the hope that they find their path in this dunya. And these things are intricately bound together. Your path finds its purpose from your belief, and your belief from what you can call out to. There's an inextricable bond between these three. So may Allah make things easy for us all and solidify our faith. Ameen. It is truly the most powerful potion, the most powerful thing that we hold dear, that really, maybe unbeknownst to us, but shapes our very existence. May Allah bless it for all of us. I hope that's been of some help. I'll take a look at some of the comments on. Right, okay, so all right, let's see. Yeah, there are still benefits to Ramadan fasts, like increasing insulin sensitivity. Yeah, that's the point, Guts, because I was saying that Ramadan is an epic opportunity for us to do it, but it's just that over the years, and I'm guilty of this, too, that we really feast out with all the kind of sugary and fatty foods, and then that, because we're overloading the system, it does away with some of the, what we could have, like that we could increase insulin sensitivity, because that's what happens in life. And as South Asians, it's shocking. There was this clip, I need to share it. I'm going to share it. I'll find it if I can. I'll share it with the Discord group first. If I'll get hold of, I'll try and track it. But there was this clip where, I may have actually shared it, actually. Yeah, I think I did. So this clip where this doctor is explaining how colonization re-engineered South Asian genetics because of the famine that the British caused. And the British were there for so long. When you're thinking, the better part of, formerly about 1 century, but they were actually there for about 3 centuries. Okay, so now during this time, what they were inflicting upon the local kind of residents, with the East India Company for so long, and then Queen Victoria officially declaring the British Raj in 1857. But during this time, when what they inflicted on the locals with the famine and the mass starvation for generation upon generation, it hardwired the genes to really store certain energy sources. And this is, and in that clip, the doctor is explaining that this is why you find the genetics of South Asian people compared to their counterparts are drastically, ridiculously magnified when it comes to things like diabetes and when it comes to heart disease, just because of how our bodies and genes, because think about it, our grandparents, that's all it was. Our grandparents were alive in the British Raj, and our great grandparents definitely suffered under that, was suffering. So that's not actually that many generations when you think about it to pass the genes on. So this is why, if you are of South Asian descent, if you're Desi and you have a slightly, higher, waist ratio, like it's just slightly some weight around the waist, you are there is a very strong possibility that you will become diabetic. It's not like it's like, what was the statistic? Something like, I think 6 times more likely than just your regular counterpart to become diabetic and to have this kind of some coronary heart diseases than your regular counterparts. Like ridiculously higher. Like it's abnormally and like monstrously higher. So yeah, and then the other things as well, what hasn't helped is our, it's like the diets as well, because people, it's like these doctors, they said to all these desi people, they said like, you need to get off, stop eating butter and stop eating, like a few decades ago. They're like, what the hell? You need to eat oils. You stop all this butter and stuff. And the oil's been it's been carcinogenic, and it's been causing cancers and causing all this kind of heart disease and and now they're like, oh my God, we got it wrong. Butter is actually quite healthy. Ghee is actually, believe it or not, healthy, and it's actually healthy for the heart. I mean, you'd never think that. Ghee is actually healthy for the heart. And you think, I guess our grandparents would always have that anyway, but yeah. So I told my parent need to eat more, less meat, and they drown fry. But honestly, I was shocked to learn this about the ghee, because it's amazing that you'd never think that it's actually healthy. And these oils are so dangerous and toxic. So these oils, out of all of them, very few are actually okay, healthy. Like you might get olive oil, for example, or coconut oil, which may be okay, of healthy. But if you heat these, especially even olive oil, to a certain level, which many people do when they're cooking curries and things, if the oil gets heated to that level, then it just becomes very unhealthy to the body, and it loses any of its positive kind of traits and just becomes something very difficult for the body to then deal with. And obviously, maybe in small portions it's not that bad, but over time it builds up. So yeah, these are things I think to, small implementations to make. Bhaskar Diwakar Chaudhry Saab. Allah bless you. May Allah bless your mom with health. Ameen. Shaykh Yusuf Qaradawi passed away. Tell us your opinion on his views. He had indeed various different opinions. Yeah, may Allah bless his afterlife and grant him an elevated maqam in Jannatul Firdaus. He has passed away. Shaykh Yusuf, Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi. Yeah, I don't think I did an episode that I never spoke about that. But yeah, we make dua. I think, we need more and more scholars like that who are prepared to think for their day and age, to increase the dynamism, the interaction between people and their faith. Because what Sheikh Yusuf Qardawi was doing was he was trying to bring a perspective of the faith to people that really stems from maslaha and maqasid. And maslaha and maqasid, to be fair, is really truly a Maliki thing. The school of Medina of Imam Malik. Even though I don't think Dr. Yusuf al-Qardawi was Maliki, but he was his whole philosophy was stemming from that kind of that angle of maqasid and maslahah, of welfare and objectives of the Sharia. So that the Sharia is always, its aim is the welfare of people. And I think, people in his, I think before, recently, it got political, but let's say a few decades ago, it wasn't political about Dr. Yusuf al-Qardawi. I think people just attacked him. It wasn't really fair. They used to attack him. They used to think he's so liberal. By today's standards, he wasn't. I don't think he was that liberal. I mean, sure, I mean, he was liberal, but he wasn't nothing shocking by today's standards. In fact, you'd see he's actually quite strict on many things. So it's just that I think he was saying some things in a time like in the 90s when nobody was saying certain things. But those things already existed in the books, but it's just our scholarship was either unaware of it or they were refusing to disclose it because maybe they felt in the name of safeguarding people from immorality, they wouldn't do full disclosure on what all the ulama of the past have said. So they would only select the ulama who, whose line they're towing, who they are in line with. So Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi started to give fatwa. His famous book, Al-Halal wal-Haram fil Islam. And, they would name it Al-Halal wal-Halal fil Islam, try and take the mick out of it. Try and take the mick out of it, get it? Al-Halal wal-Haram fil Islam, in Islam. And they said we should call it Al-Halal wal-Halal fil Islam. Because allegedly they're trying to say he's saying everything is halal. And in that he'll speak about masturbation and he speaks about these kind of things. But these topics are old and ancient, and it's just because of either the poor scholarship of the ulama or the lack of transparency that they adopted and disclosure that they upheld. Because this wasn't being discussed. But now look, they're all saying this. You're going to get Dr. Zakir Naik saying the same thing. Oh, masturbation is not haram. You'll get Shaykh Yasir al-Qadi. You'll get all these people now. Now all these people are coming round to this. You'll get, what's his name? Shaykh Adil al-Kilban. You get many you get certain Salafi kind of scholars saying music is not haram. You'll get other people have now come round to the idea. But it's just that Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi was ahead of the curve. So he was doing it when they either didn't know about it, and that's then a reflection of their poor research, because if I don't even know these opinions exist, then that's a reflection of that reflects poorly on my knowledge. Or I knew about it, but I chose not to tell people because I felt I knew better for them, which I think it's very patronizing and it's an infantilization of people to say, well, I know better for you, so I will disclose this I will refuse to disclose this. Sorry. So that's the kind of, and then there was sectarianism. Sectarianism is the death of faith. And it's such a poison. Honestly, beware of sectarianism, people. Beware of it, honestly. It is wretched. If it gets into, it's like, it's a cancer to your iman. And sectarianism was another thing they hated on Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi because of that. Because he wasn't really sectarian or denominational. And then recently this whole thing, it got a bit more political because of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin and the whole thing. But that's only recently. And that too, it's all politics. This whole thing, it's all politics, man. Beware of politics shading your faith, applying a filter to your faith. It's all politics, sub Maya. It's all, that's what it is, man. It's all, smoke and screens. So, yeah, so that's, may Allah bless his afterlife. Ameen. All right, what's this question? Did I miss somebody's super chat? No, I don't think I did. Right, okay, so since Isis Saracen, much love for the super chat, Yar. Allah bless you. Since Iblis was regarded the best of jinn in another world or universe, just as the Prophet was considered the best of mankind, to open up the possibility of reincarnation of worlds. I'm not sure where it says that Iblis was the best of jinn. I think this is just more mythical. It does say in the Quran there is a verse that وَكَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ, but here فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ. But it's not clear what that means, because if you read Qurtubi and these Mufassirin, they say here jinn doesn't mean jinn, as in the jinn, but jinn here just means something unseen. So this is why jinn doesn't always refer to, you see, so this is another issue that, you know, when the word jinn is being used, what does it mean? So but I'm not sure how that ties into the latter part of your question. Does this open up the possibility of reincarnation of worlds? I don't get how that ties into that. I don't. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, to be honest. So my apologies. If it's about reincarnation, generally Muslims don't believe in. Generally speaking, the Islamic faith, for the most part, doesn't speak of reincarnation or purport it as a view. That said, certain Muslims, including certain Sunni Muslims, did believe in reincarnation, including the famous Soharwardi. But their view of reincarnation wasn't what we might think reincarnation today. So today, reincarnation is dominated by the the Hindu version of reincarnation or the Buddhist version. So the Hindu version being more popular, that, you know, that this whole samsara of life, this cycle of life, and you have karma or karma, and that is your kind of what you carry with you. There's these kind of deeds, and if they are bad, you are then reincarnated into something worse off. And if they are good, you are reincarnated into something better off. And I guess the highest thing you could possibly be reincarnated as is maybe a Brahmin from the upper priestly class. And then if you devote your life to God, you could possibly you could escape from this reincarnation by attaining eternal moksha and reaching this state of nirvana. Now, this is the kind of very Hinduistic. So you could be reincarnated as an animal or a tree or a stone so that's very Hindu, okay, and that's this kind of transmigration of souls reincarnation. Okay, Buddhism is slightly different, so it doesn't really. I mean, it's similar-ish, but it's not. It's like you're trying to escape this whole samsara, but it's not based on your karma. It's just you become reincarnated in an unrelated way. So it's like there's even though there's cause and effect, but the cause and effect is not meaningful in Buddhism. So it's like saying, well, you know, they give the analogy often of a snooker ball. One ball will hit another and set it into motion, but this ball is nothing to do with that ball, and it's not a consequence of it. So that's more Buddhist reincarnation. The Muslims who believed in reincarnation, so they were, like I said, they are a minority of people, but they were certain people, some from different denominations, different sects, and some Sunnis. Very few minority did believe in reincarnation, like Sohrawardi, I believe. So the philosopher Sohrawardi. So now to them, it wasn't. It was more what they felt was, right. Okay. So pause that for a moment. To understand it, you have to look at it like this. They didn't believe that every person is reincarnated. They didn't believe that. But they believed that it's possible that some people get reincarnated. And if they do get reincarnated, it's not because of something they've done. It's just that their ruh got to play twice, for example. And so this was the kind of thing that they alluded to. That's not what most Muslims believe, to be fair. But so this is it now. Okay, so just to grasp that, and then we can, sum this up. Their belief on reincarnation. So, okay, let's pause this, suspend this for a moment. All Muslims, generally speaking, believe in a kind of reincarnation. Okay. Let me explain what that means. But they just don't class it as reincarnation, but they believe in a kind. So all Muslims, generally speaking, believe that we were consciousness and we existed as ruh before we existed here in this dunya. And we as ruh were conscious and knew things and knew each other. So most Muslims actually believe this. Most Sunni Muslims, most Muslims throughout the world, they believe that we existed before as souls, which were conscious, which was consciousness, and then it got incarnated, because incarnate is from the word, this carne, this like in Spanish, carne is meat, to get into the meat. So we were then put into the flesh of this human body. So this was like our second existence, in a way. But they just don't call this reincarnation. But they all believe that the ruh existed before. So this, and it just didn't just exist, it existed and lived and knew people, knew other souls, and was conscious and knew things. And so this is how most Muslims believe that. And then that soul got incarnated into this flesh in this dunya, and this was our second thing. And then there will be the akhirah. That's what most Muslims believe, although they don't tend to use the word reincarnation. I think they don't use it to separate, to distinguish us from people who believe categorically in reincarnation, like Hindus and other people. So to make that difference, like tanasakhul arwah, Muslims generally don't use the word that we were incarnated, but they, in essence, do believe this about the ruh. Now, okay, so put that aside. Now, the next thing is that, let's say you read the Quran without, let's say you never knew, you didn't have much context, or you weren't taught Aqidah, and you weren't taught these things, but you were just given the Quran and you could understand Arabic, and you were to read the Quran from scratch. Many verses in the Quran, there are several verses that suggest, they incline towards that you have, no, maybe not everyone, but some in those verses speak about two deaths. So there are several verses, there are certain verses in the Quran that speak of you being dead, that God gave you death, then he gave you life, then he gave you death, then he gave you life. And like this, there's a few other verses that read this kind of way. So now, if you didn't know if you didn't have creed, you would assume that, okay, some people live twice, then they get to live twice. And that's with, you come back to those philosophers and scholars and those people who believed in, that minority that believed in reincarnation, took these verses, they took them literally, because the verses literally seem to speak of that. It seems to assert that you had a death, and then you had a life, and then you had death again. So now most scholars metaphorically interpret the first death. Like they say that first death is talking about non-existence, and then you had life. So they say the first death is a metaphor. So this is where generally, so most Muslims do not believe in reincarnation. Some Muslims did, but not in the Hindu sense. They just believe that there may be some people who their ruh it lives this life, but Allah allows that same ruh to play. So an analogy would be, imagine you're playing a computer game. Now your character dies. Now you the player plays the same game with a different character. So that's the kind of analogy that some people, but that's not mainstream beliefs, and that's not the main thing. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, let's move on now. Um, all right. To what extent must we maintain orthodoxy in Islam? I've got a detailed clip on Shukran Amin. Much love for the super chat. Um, I've got a very detailed clip on orthodoxy in Islam. Do watch that because I won't be able to do that justice right now. And also watch my clip on um, on what is halal to eat in Islam. It's called something like, if you type in the word like halal meat and my name, it'll come up. I've forgotten the name of the title now. It's something like what can we eat in Islam? Meat, a case study, something like this, or a case study for diversity. Now, when you in that clip, even though I'm speaking about meat as, prima facie, that's the thing I'm speaking about, but by extension I'm speaking about what forms um, a kind of orthodoxical understanding, and how diversity is inescapable, and it's so hard hitting. So do, if you get a chance to watch that. I do have another clip as well. I don't know if it's cut out as a clip, but if you type in orthodoxy, it's definitely in one of the meaning with MALMs. So do check that out. Right, okay, I wanted to speak a bit about belief and introduce you guys to a debate that took place um, in the later part of the 19th century, the 1800s. And that is between some philosophers, a philosopher from England, a mathematician, a physicist, uh, and he wrote this book. So his name is William Clifford. He's from Cambridge, and he was somebody who grew up a Christian, but later on really was heavily influenced by the more broader secular thought of his age. And he turned against religion in the sense that he deemed it absurd to believe, because he had this notion that it is unacceptable and impermissible to believe on insufficient evidence. So he writes this book called The Ethics of Belief, and he says it's unethical to have such a belief. This is then met by William James, who refutes him and does a rebuttal of his argument with his work, the will to believe. So let's take a look at this. I wanted to introduce you guys to this debate because it is very relevant even in our age. You've got there on the left hand side William James, who is a philosopher, historian, psychologist. He's the father of American psychology. He was a medical doctor. He set up the first department for psychology in Harvard, and the first school for psychology in the US. He set it up. And arguably, you had other psychologists around, but arguably, I believe it may have been the first structured school for psychology in the world. Allahu A'lam. But definitely in America, and arguably in the West. Now, he also authored the first textbook in psychology called the uh, Principles of Psychology, amongst other books, and he's contributed profoundly to the field of psychology. Till this date, he's often quoted his research on the concept of the self, on consciousness, on the will to believe, on so many things. I mean, he's very profound, and he was a person who believed in God. And it's fascinating. He says, he has this book on what is it, nitrous oxide. So you get that, and that. Yeah, I know it's a bit of an epidemic amongst young people. They are in the UK. You get these NOS canisters, these kind of balloons that people fill up the balloons. Now, in small quantities and things, this may not be that dangerous, but in large quantities, it can be very dangerous, and if done recklessly. And by the nature of people being young people, it's kind of bound into it, the element of recklessness. And so you're getting a lot of people buy these massive canisters full of NOS, of nitrous oxide, sometimes called laughing gas, and they will just just kind of zap themselves out with it, and it can cause neuronal damage, resulting in all kinds of things. So yeah, that's something. But nitrous oxide, which was being experimented with in William James's time, and it was quite novel, he gets high on it, and he gets so high, and he keeps testing himself, pushing himself to the limits on nitrous oxide. And he writes that it was only on nitrous oxide that when he was so high, he finally got to understand what Hegel was on about in his philosophy. That's hilarious. And he writes about it. He's got some writing on it. Right, so that's crazy. So that's William James. But otherwise, I mean, not to don't let that taint your perspective on him. He's a very dignified personality, very respected till this date. People still speak very profoundly of him. I cited him quite a bit when I spoke of the whole the numinous experience, and especially under psychedelics, because he defines really he has a significant contribution on the mystical experience, and what he brings down the 4 factors, which you can put as the word pint, which is passivity, ineffability, noetic quality, and transience. So but I've spoken about that in other sessions. But that's William James, who's around, as you can see, from 1842 to 1910. So really, people you've got alive at this kind of time in other parts of the world are like Mirza Ghalib is alive, the great poets, Adar, Momin Khan, Momin, all this. The British are about to declare British Raj in India. That kind of stuff is going on in that side of the world. In England, you've got William Clifford, as you can see there. Look at that beard. You got to say, though, that beard will make a lot of our Salafi brethren quite envious. I would say. Look at the style of the beard, though. He's rocking it. Huh? You got to say he's rocking it. And the center parting as well. That's right. You got to. So, yeah. Right. So, uh, right. So he was from England. He went to Cambridge, and I believe he lectured as well in Cambridge, in London, and other parts of England. He was a leading mathematician, a philosopher. He contributed to algebra with geometrics. In fact, geometric algebra is introduced by him. And so he lived a very, one could say, a short span. Um, he passes away at the age of 33. So yeah, so William Clifford, he writes this book saying, look, it's called The Ethics of Belief. And this is a time where there's a lot of discussion going on about belief, because you've got Darwin, the origin of species. You've got the Industrial Revolution, technology is coming forth. The Reformation has already happened. America is being created. You've got a lot of stuff going on. This whole new thing about liberty and so on. And so, I mean, here are three ways of looking at faith at the time in the West. You've got Blaise Pascal, well, from before, that is, Pascal from the 1600s, but Pascal's wager, who'd argued, you're all popular with it. I mean, you're all familiar with it, who said that it's as if, he said, look, if you're a betting person, it's better to bet on God existing, because even if you get it wrong, you're still safe. Whereas if you bet that God does not exist and you get it wrong, then you're kind of doomed. So this is known as Pascal's wager. That was one way of looking at faith, as though it's a kind of gamble. Well, let's just gamble on the safe side. That's one way, but to be honest, people don't like that. Now, you can see William James, who he did believe in God, but he criticizes and condemns Pascal's approach, because he says that, if that's how you're going to see God, then really you're too far gone. Because if your faith is this faith of saying, oh well, I'm not sure I really believe in it, but what the hell, I'll just bet to be on the safe side. He says, well, that's not really true faith. But you've got this discussion because you've got then people from England rising, like Clifford, saying, look, actually, it's absurd to believe, it's unacceptable to believe on insufficient evidence. And because there is insufficient evidence about God, it is therefore impermissible to believe. Now, here, William James defends belief in God, and he refutes, because he highlights that Clifford has actually got this wrong. That, you see, belief is something that is much more complex than how people are making it out. And in some ways, this is almost a prototype discussion to what you're going to get with the likes of now Jordan Peterson. This is in its very proto version of it, where William James is highlighting that, look, actually, belief is much more complex than that. You can't just say to people, oh, suspend belief, because it's not that easy. And we'll come to something known as doxastic involuntarism. And we'll come to that. It's about how much control do we have over our beliefs. But yeah, so just bring this up right now. So this was William Clifford and his famous statement, it is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. So you can see how firm he was, and this became known as the Cliffordian standard. So summing him up, it is wrong. So this is his thing. This is his kind of golden principle of Clifford. And just look at him donning that beard, huh? Two fistfuls. You're Clifford, doing it. So, so he says it is wrong in all cases to believe on insufficient evidence, and where it is presumption to doubt and to investigate, there it is worse than presumption to believe. So what is he saying here? So Clifford is arguing that, look, if you had imagine you could, right, there's a chance for something could be a certain way. He says it is worse for you to just believe this. You need to suspend judgment. Okay, you must suspend judgment, and you can't accept it as a belief. It's just a presumption, and it must stay that, and it is unacceptable. And he uses words like impermissible and uses these kind of words. So this was, and his book, Ethics of Belief, it's not so long. You can have a read of it online. Now, William James rises to refute him, and he writes, look, believe truth, shun error. These, we see, are two materially different laws. Okay, so to believe the truth and to shun what is wrong. It says, and by choosing between them, we may end by coloring differently our whole intellectual life. We may regard the chase for truth as paramount, So what he's saying is, look, people, they set out on a pursuit for truth, and the avoidance of error as secondary, or we may, on the other hand, treat the avoidance of error as more imperative and let truth take its chance. So you see, what William James was saying is that people don't work this way, how Clifford is saying. People don't work as in they don't just suspend judgments, not on things that matter. He says that they seek out truths, and they, like, one of these is primary and the other is secondary. So either they are going with something, and yeah, there may be errors in it, but that's secondary to them. So they're not going to look heavily, or they may be more forgiving of errors, or they're looking to criticize something. So that's primary, and it may have some valid points, but they are more overlooking of those. So he has this statement where he says that belief has within itself, belief has the validation of itself within it, that it carries at times within it the mechanism to validate itself. And I think the reason I'm bringing this to our attention is because this is still very relevant to the debates going on today. So he says, look, Clifford exhorts us to the latter course. Believe nothing, he tells us. Keep your mind in suspense forever, rather than by closing it on insufficient evidence, incur the awful risk of believing lies. Because he says that, look, he's saying that what if it's not true? Therefore, it's better to not believe it. He says to preach skepticism to us as a duty until sufficient evidence for religion be found is tantamount. That see, what Clifford is calling for is equal to telling us that when in the presence of religious hypothesis, that to yield to our fear of its being error is wiser and better than to yield to our hope that it may be true. You see, what William James is saying here is that he's refuting, he's rebuking Clifford by saying that, look, Clifford's telling us that, let's say there's a chance, like, does God exist? Like, we don't know with certainty. So there's a chance that he exists, there's a chance he doesn't exist, let's say. Now he's saying, well, Clifford is arguing that until we know with certainty, we must suspend and reject all beliefs. So William James is saying, look, let's say there is a chance we're wrong. There is a chance that you could be wrong, but there is a hope that you are right. Why should we suspend things? Why not go with the hope? Because this is how human beings operate. He's pointing out here the human psychology. He's also pointing out that this belief and hope, going with it, even if you don't have the full evidences, what William James argues is it works out always more successful. And he gives examples of people who believe they are better candidates for certain jobs. They often get the jobs. People who believe they are deserving of certain opportunities often get the opportunities, even though statistically they are less, they're more optimistic than the statistics read for them. So the evidence, according to Clifford's viewpoint, they should never feel optimistic because they don't have the evidence to show it, because it's just a hope, but they could be wrong, and therefore they should suspend judgment. But that's not how human beings behave. We, without certain evidence, we still, with the hope of some evidence, we still take that leap of faith. As human beings, we do it in our daily lives, we do it in our institutions, we do it in our constructs, we do it in our faith. So this is what William James is arguing. So yeah, and this is a good point, as Mark Alam Alonzet has. It's like the argument of leaving a question blank on test instead of answering incorrectly. You'd rather give it a go, exactly. And he says, you, on the other hand, may think that the risk of being in error is a very small matter when compared with the blessing of real knowledge. I myself find it impossible to go with Clifford. You see, because he's saying, you here is the person that, look, there's a chance you may be wrong, But in your heart, the blessing of faith, it outweighs that. Like it's fine for you to it weighs heavily for you to live your life with faith. It gives you meaning. It gives you the fight, and that preponderates. Sure, nobody, we don't scientifically or palpably know God. We can't touch God or feel God in that sense. One can argue through consciousness, and that's a different argument, which obviously those arguments hadn't developed really in William James's time. But his point here is saying that this Cliffordian principle, it's absurd because human beings don't behave that way. And something that Clifford gives in his ethics of belief, he gives this example of the ship owner. And he says that imagine the ship owner imagine he thought that my ship could be a bit damaged. He thinks it could be, but then he has some doubt that the ship isn't fully seaworthy. He doesn't have certainty that it is, and he has some doubt. But he then lets the ship crew go out to sea and they all drown. So Clifford argues that he is categorically at fault. That how did he let these people do this? Because he did not have certainty. So he should have suspended judgment and not acted on. And this is interesting because here faith ties into action, which is a discussion in Islam as well about Iman. It is, yurbatu bil amal, or yazku, as Ibn Abdul Bar says, it kind of purifies or manifests with action. So here's the thing. So Clifford is saying the same way you would say the ship owner was wrong, you would say to somebody, if you did not have full faith, then how can you go around saying God does exist? This is obviously, Clifford's point on the whole, and you can see his kind of his thing about, look, he's very anti-faith, that you can't, and the reason I'm saying this is because this is the same kind of argument that is used by atheists today, that it is wrong to believe on insufficient evidence. Okay, so this is what people will say, that and what's actually interesting, okay, now this is weird, and atheists today do this as well. They lean in on our moral duty. You see, now this is the weird thing. So this is actually from Clifford as well. He says that, look, it is a moral duty to follow this epistemology that you cannot believe something based on insufficient evidence. So you'll get that today with atheists as well. They'll say that, look, well, no, it's almost an imperative, a kind of moral imperative to be true to yourself and believe something only that can be proven. But first of all, the question is, that in itself is a belief. And how do you justify that belief? Point one. Point two, where on earth does this morality, what is it anchored in? Just evolution. I mean, what is it anchored in? And if God does not exist, and everything thereby is, it's nihilistic and meaningless in the end, even if it has some meaning now but ultimately means nothing, then what does it matter? How can anything truly be wrong? Because ultimately there is no right and wrong. It's just meaningless, incoherent coming together of things. It doesn't mean anything. So this is always an interesting point, that not only does Clifford bring this up, but even today, a lot of atheists will appeal to this kind of higher moral. And you see, this was the thing, that what William James is, he's criticizing him. Now, this thing, doxastic involuntarism, this is an important point. You see, what William James says, he says that beliefs, he calls them, are live beliefs, live, as in live and dead. He uses these opposites, and he does use other. He says as well that they have momentum and they are forced. He uses these things as well. And what he's talking about, he says that, look, I accept that people do what you're saying, but not on things where it matters. He says, like, yeah, it's true. Let's say somebody said to you, okay, which holds more nutritional value, Pepsi, Coke, or Coca-Cola, Coke? Now, you don't know. Here, you are prepared to suspend judgment because it doesn't mean anything to you in your world. You see, this is just simply saying, well, okay, so William James is accepting this, that it's true that in certain things, people they are prepared to withhold judgment, but not on things where they matter. So a live hypothesis, first of all, he says a belief, for it to be a live belief, it has to exist in a social structure for your surroundings. So, for example, in America, or now, let's say as Muslims, because Muslims believe in jinn, they are more likely to believe in things like jinn possession. So if something happened to someone and you said to them, oh, this is a jinn possessing, it's not mental health, it's jinn possession. Why do they accept it? Because they have this live hypothesis that these things happen, a narrative. So another word is like this social narrative, psychosocial narrative. William James calls it a live hypothesis. But whereas in some cultures, that's a dead hypothesis. So let's say generally in England, people don't believe in demonic possessions. I mean, not regular people, regular English people don't believe in that. So to them, this would be a dead hypothesis. So they would easily rule this out because the hypothesis isn't alive in that psychosocial construct. But what's interesting is, for example, depression is a live hypothesis as a psychosocial reality within, let's say, England. Whereas in certain cultures, it may be a dead hypothesis. So this is interesting, that what William James is saying is that when a belief is a live or dead hypothesis, it makes a difference to how willing you are to accept or reject it. Because you could easily, like as Muslims, you could easily reject, let's say, polytheism, or you could reject Hindu, these kind of reincarnations, and you could reject these because it's not in your world, it's not a live hypothesis. And then he also explains that it's not, you see, by he explains things like by it having momentum, and by being forced, as in it's imperative, like it means something, like you have to act. Like if a person was ill and they needed a medication and somebody said do this or somebody said do that, here you would have to act. You couldn't just suspend judgment, say, well, this doctor said this doctor said that, I don't really know, so I'm going to do nothing. William James saying it doesn't work like that in the real world. People will not just suspend judgment, they will follow one or the other because it matters. It's a forced, kind of momentous, live belief for them. So yeah, this is interesting. So this is actually quite, very fascinating. Another thing that is also brought in here is this psychosocial construct. You see, so you can that what this is an interesting point, right? Beliefs are tied into social beliefs. So, what William James does argue is sometimes certain beliefs may be wrong, but they tie into a greater, he doesn't use the word a greater narrative, but they tie into a greater narrative which may be right for them. So, a good example of this, by the way, is like the discussion I got into with Sheikh Abdurrahman Gori when we had a discussion on people who visit shrines. And even though that belief may be inaccurate, but it ties into a greater set of psychosocial structures which are different, not to do with that, but are valid. So this is what William James argues as well, that sometimes people might have a wrong belief, but that belief enables a greater belief and it works. So a good example of this is, for example, let's say you believe you're lucky. A person just believes they are lucky. Now, technically, that belief is inaccurate because there's no way that you are just lucky, statistically, or there's totally insufficient. I mean, anthropologically speaking, there's no such thing as luck. I mean, sure, there's circumstances and where a person is born, but luck by the sense of a kind of divinely ordained luck. Now, there's nothing to prove that, but if a person believed it, let's say he's totally wrong. Like, let's say you asked a person, why do you believe you're lucky? So they said, well, I believe I'm lucky because I was born on this particular date. And when you add these numbers together, let's say I was born on this date of this month of this year, and you add this together, and this now equals 786. And 786 is also the number for Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim. So let's say now a person said that. Or let's say he said something totally wacko, like made zero sense. Like he said, oh, I believe I'm lucky because, you know, I was born on this day, and on this date, let's say it says something totally random, like, oh, there was a sudden weather change and something totally bizarre. It makes zero sense of what he's saying, but he just believes it, or she believes it, that I'm lucky. Now, because they have this belief, statistically, they are more likely to face better luck in the world, which is ironic because it's a confirmation bias. It just further kind of solidifies their belief, which further increases their success. So even though that belief in itself may be erroneous and wrong, but it ties into a greater structure of beliefs where they are actually correct in getting. So for example, they believe that I need to get success in life, I need to get this, and they get all these things. So yeah, so it's like the like the kind of Pygmalion effect or the self-fulfilling prophecy. But my point of saying that, and it ties into today what we're saying, if you believe it, you can achieve it. Because this is the argument, you see. So the point is that sometimes people can be wrong in certain beliefs, but that wrong ties into a greater thing which works as correct. So this is what William James is arguing, that you can't just take you can't extract one set of beliefs and just dissect them, because these beliefs are tied into a dynamic psychosocial reality. So he gives this example as well. This is actually a very powerful example that William James gives. He says that beliefs tie into a community as well. So I believe something because I such and such believes it, and they believe it, and they believe it, and we all believe it. Like, let's say as Muslims, we believe as an ummah. So this also has an effect, you see, because he gives the example that why is it that because when you have a concordance, this concordant behavior, this in agreement kind of compliant beliefs, coordinated beliefs amongst a group, it takes a life of its own. So he gives the example of how can you get a small number of people, bandits, who can rob an entire train of so many people who outnumber them, who individually could beat these people. But why do they manage to successfully rob it? Because the individual people don't have a shared belief that they will cooperate with one another. Whereas the thieves robbing the train have this coordinated belief that they will assist one another in doing this. Whereas the passengers on the train don't know if the other people will assist them or not. So, this absence of psychosocial belief renders them unable to act in that situation. So it's interesting that this discussion has so many layers to it, but it's fascinating. I wanted to bring it to your attention that you could see that, look, this is the kind of summary, right? That you had these people from the scientific community of the past that that poem. You had these people of the scientific community of the past that had this debate on belief. And what uh, Clifford was arguing that, look, it is always unacceptable to believe on insufficient evidence, and one must suspend judgment. William James refutes him by saying this doxastic, doxastic involuntarism. Okay, so the whole thing about that is that what is doxastic involuntarism? It's that, and this is to do with dogma. The term is doxastic is to do with where you get dogmas in orthodoxy and orthodoxical and doxastic. So that's where it's coming from. So doxastic involuntarism. So what he's saying is people don't have that much control over their beliefs. Like they do, but over a gradual, long process. It's not as easy as a person can't just switch off their beliefs. It has to be a journey. And it can't just be like, you can't just say to someone, oh, you believe in that. Oh, there isn't concrete evidence. Stop believing in it. And they'll stop believing in it. They wouldn't. That it just doesn't work. That he's trying to explain to people that, look, this is incredibly naive. And he describes him as an enfant terrible. One of these troublemakers, enfant terrible, from which is from French, a terrible child, but it used in English to mean this kind of troublemaker who's doing this thing, because human beliefs don't work that way. You can't just tell people to switch beliefs off. They just don't. It doesn't work. They don't have that much voluntary control over them. Sure, they can influence people's beliefs, can be influenced, but it's a process. It's not this simple as you say to someone, oh, do you have belief for that? Okay, no, stop believing in it. They can't just stop believing in it like that. So yeah, so that's so yeah, groupthink is an interesting point. So I know this was maybe this is slightly off, but the reason I wanted to cover it is because it is important. Look, these people are great figures in our societies, in Western societies, in the branches and departments of psychology. These are revered, dignified folk in literature till today. William James is, he's a huge person as and dignified. And it's important to acquaint ourselves with these people who've argued for not only things like the mystical experience, but for belief in God and the arguments they used. And they are still very relevant. Sure, we've adapted new terminologies and we've kind of tweaked things along the way and we've added more layers to the arguments. But in its essence, it's good to know this kind of stuff. So I hope it's been of some value to you guys. I hope I've not just bored you. But yeah, I really wanted to share it. Sometimes I'm like, I need to share this with these guys, man. I hope, it's, oh, shukran. Alama Lanzetta, I'm glad you covered this topic, Mufti. Shukran. This was an important topic. Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, And Scorpio also, I think the compound effect that mentioned this, but if you believe something, you'll be more aware of it and look out for it and take more opportunities which could help in the long run. Absolutely. And this is why it's so important in Islam to always, we are reminded time and time again to have husna dhan billah, husna dhan billah. Always think well that God is treating you so kindly, that He's so gracious to you, that He's always giving, He's always, this is time and time you are reminded in Islam, ahsin dhan billah, always have a good mindset towards God of how He treats you. And in a hadith, inda ana inda abdi ka dhannihi bi, or ana inda dhanni abdi, what is it? Ana inda abdi ka dhannihi bi, that I treat my servant, I treat my person as my person expects me to treat them. So yeah. So shukran, guys. That was really wow, quite a bit there. We've really gone on. You know what? It is quite late. I can share the link if anybody. I suppose I could have a quick chat. If anybody is, and then we could wrap this up. It's been quite a night. A mind trap with a skeptic would be interesting. Sure. I mean, yeah, put me in touch with a good skeptic. Right. Okay. I've shared that. Let's see. Right, people. Azamat Osanaf, shukran, much love. Allah bless you. Sight of stop exposing me, Mufti. Have I missed a super chat? Let me check the super chats in case I missed any. Right, okay, so Kalvim, much love for the super chat. Allah bless you. Mufti, who is your favorite philosopher, Eastern and Western? You know, I don't know. That's it's interesting. I don't know. It's a tricky one, really. You know, in many ways, we are all inspired ultimately, I guess, the whole method by Socrates. And that, I guess, is yeah, but one could apply the whole, the Jamesian and Cliffordian debate scenario to Socrates. But yeah, there is always that. Because he just sets this whole thing into motion, doesn't he? Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by philosophers. If I read their discussions, I'm kind of wowed by it. I'm not from the Muslim philosophies. I do love Ibn Rushd. Maybe there's a bias there because he's Maliki. No, he was epic. Ibn Rushd was epic. But yeah, we've got to really investigate more and more Muslim philosophy as well and see how it's kind of contributed to the discourse. But yeah, I value all kinds of philosophies, man. The unconscious mind. Ultimately, I guess, would you place Freud? I would place him in a way amongst philosophers, but Jung, definitely, I would place him amongst philosophers as well. But that whole discovery of the unconscious thing is so fascinating to me. So, yeah, Terence McKenna. I just love Terence McKenna's stuff. His stuff is so soothing. He has that same Hamza Yusuf voice, or Hamza Yusuf has his voice, doesn't he? Terence McKenna, you got to just listen to some of his stuff on YouTube. It's like, wow. This guy, I mean, I don't know. Would people categorize him as a philosopher? I would. But yeah, it's, yeah, so I hope that's of some help. Ibn Tashfin, much love for the super chat. Allah bless you. What does Allah mean when He says this book has no doubt? Often used to justify the approach to the Quran. Yeah, so look, Allah says, and this is not, where Allah says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابَ الَّذِي لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Now, here, so first of all, Al-Kitab is speaking about scripture. Now, Allah does not say in the sense that will people have shak or doubt? It depends on what we're speaking about. The word that is used is raib. Okay, like a kind of hesitation. It comes from that kind of yartab, something that yartab, there's this element of reticence and hesitancy and this kind of doubt in that sense. There, you see, when you're hesitant, you're doubtful about something. And in that sense, scripture isn't, it doesn't come forward from this kind of like reticence or this kind of hesitancy. It comes forward with a certainty that you move forward. It gives you guidance. Hudan lil muttaqin. It is guidance for those who are mindful. And it's not indecisive, it's decisive. So this is speaking about it from that perspective. That, yeah, so, and sure, other people, I suppose you could, one of the things about the verse of the Quran is you could always look at it afresh with fresh eyes and have, more and more meanings dawn on you. But yeah, that's, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. And al-kitab can mean scripture, it can mean commandments, it can mean revelation, because you have to remember at that time the Quran was not a book when it was being revealed. Al-kitab, the book, the kind of message, the revelation, the scripture, the commandment, the ordainment, that la rayba fi. There is no doubt, but doubt here is, I see, Allahu a'lam, but I see this rayb as more about that kind of doubt from a kind of reticence and hesitancy. It's not shak. The Arabic word shak isn't used. It's not talking about do you hal tashukuna. Obviously, the people of faith don't la yashukun fi kitabillah. They don't have doubt in, but it's not, in my understanding, it's not talking about that anyway. That's not even the discussion. It's talking about what this brings you is something resolute. It doesn't bring you something wishy-washy. It brings you a message that is strong. And it is for people who have strength in their faith. So that's the message that's what I understand, Allahu a'lam, from that verse. Okay, guys. What's this? Somebody, do you know who I am? Somebody said, are you the one we've been waiting for? Allahu Akbar. On that positive note, I guess. Right. Well, let's wrap this up, people. And let's wrap this up. And yeah, so shukran. It's been quite a night, quite an evening. May Allah bless you all. Shukran for your kind words. And in the words of Sauda, speaking of words, as always, Sauda khuda ke vaste kar kissa mukhtasar. Apni to neend ud gayi tere fasane mein. He says, that's it, Sauda. Sauda was a contemporary of Mir. He says, that's it, Sauda. Mirza Rafiuddin Sauda. He says, wrap it up now, man. He says, these tales of yours, I've lost my sleep because of this. Right. So, shukran, guys. Much love. If you do want to reach out, do follow my, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube, subscribe, click the notification bell, spread the love, leave comments, positive comments. Yeah. Or leave comments, just, interact. Yeah. And you can click, if you want to reach out to me, Instagram is a good place as well. But if you're interested in one-to-one sessions, perspective sessions, then you can book one-to-one hourly perspective sessions from Patreon, which is Patreon. Did I have it here? Yep, there it is in the bottom right hand corner, patreon.com/MALM. And that also, the other tiers, that's tier 2, those are the one-to-one hourly sessions. Because I get people as well, and they look, I get it, people do have a lot going on, and people want to have a detailed discussion, and they want to, and people have different things, and sometimes people just trying to get their head around a topic, and sometimes it's more actual, these are like, as William James would say, they're forced, momentous, they kind of live hypotheses that are affecting their lives, their situations. They want to discuss them, they want to have an understanding, and and you can't really do that. I mean, I do come on here, and you could come on live here, but other than that, it's difficult on social media. Sure, you can watch videos, but you're more than welcome. That's a platform to book these one-to-one sessions and chat there. Other than that, guys, take very good care of yourselves. Salamullahi alaikum wa khuda hafiz. May Allah keep you all smiling.